Salas, who sits on the bench in the District of New Jersey. Judge, thanks so much for being with us. I want to get to some of what the government is claiming here, but I do want to start with the broader decision to sue 15 federal judges. Is there any kind of precedent for a move like this?
Well, listen, I really can't say too much about an active case, but, you know, some would say that this is unprecedented. The Department of Justice generally represents judges when we're sued in our official capacity. And now we have a situation in which we're being sued. I think that I look at all of these calls for impeachment for judges just doing their jobs, suing judges for disagreeing with our opinions. And I'm brought back to Chief Justice Roberts when he talked about the illegitimate attacks against the judiciary. Violence, intimidation, we've seen a lot of that lately, the spreading of disinformation, and of course, willfully defying court orders. You know, Mr. Sanchez, there is a constitutional framework that has been working in this country for as long as this country's existed. And that's called an appeal, an emergent application to a higher court. So I would say to you that, unfortunately, I think that the judiciary in many ways is under attack. And we are seeing that in the number of threats that are being lobbed against judges, pizzas being sent to judges' homes in the middle of the night, to their children's homes, pizzas being sent in my murdered son's name. These are acts of intimidation meant to chill judges and the third branch of government. We have a lot going on here, but I will tell you that all Americans should be very concerned about the attacks against the third branch of government. You know, we have had a flat budget for over 2 years. Threats are going up. We're at a 408 threats against judges, and we're only in June. And the budget is going down. Threats are up. The budget's down. This is a dangerous place for the judiciary to be in the United States of America.
Yeah, Judge, I should let our viewers know you suffered personal loss. Sorry?
I said very dangerous. I mean, I'm here to tell you, Mr. Sanchez, on what is going to be the eve of the anniversary of my only child's murder. My only child was murdered.
Yeah, I was about to mention that we should let our viewers know that you suffered personal loss as a result of your work as a judge, and you've been outspoken with the need to protect members of the judiciary at just about every level. I do wonder what you make of the administration's claims that judges are trying to undermine the president's agenda broadly with these nationwide injunctions. Do you see that argument as hindering the work of the judiciary?
You know, Chief Justice Roberts talked about the spreading of disinformation. And I think that we need to think about when people in political power with large powerful platforms refer to judges as monsters, refer to judges as unconstitutional crazy leftist judges, people with power referring to us as deranged, really politicizing the justice system, you know, calling us corrupt, calling for the articles of impeachment for us doing our jobs. You know, I think this weakens the public's confidence, and this is the type of spreading of information that is very troublesome. Because if you keep calling judges rogues over and over and over again, and you keep saying we're in the pocket of the other party, or you keep calling us corrupt without any factual bases, you know, what you're doing is you're continuing to spread that out so the public begins to lose trust in the justice system. That is dangerous for democracy.
Donald Trump wants to govern like a dictator, and the 6-3 conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court seems eager to let him. In an impassioned dissent to today's ruling on birthright citizenship and nationwide injunctions, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson warned of what lies ahead for our democracy now that her conservative colleagues have curtailed one of the only means of reining in potentially illegal actions from this or really any administration. Quote, "Disaster looms. What I mean by this is that our rights-based legal system can only function properly if the executive and everyone else is always bound by law." Today's decision is a seismic shock to that foundational norm, allowing the executive to violate the law at its prerogative with respect to anyone who has not yet sued, carves out a huge exception, a gash in the basic tenets of our founding charter that could turn out to be a mortal wound. What is more, to me, requiring courts themselves to provide the dagger makes a mockery of the judiciary's solemn duty to safeguard the rule of law. Senator Chris Van Hollen is a Democrat of Maryland, and he joins me now to discuss all of this. Senator, thanks so much for joining me. Today, you
Catherine, good to be with you.
Great to see you. Today, you decried the court ceding power to what you call a lawless authoritarian president. What do you think the long-term practical implications of this ruling are or could be?
Well, I agree with Justice Jackson and with the dissent in this case, which is that it is a big blow to our ability to enforce our rights because our rights, our constitutional rights, our other legal rights are, of course, only as good as our ability to enforce them. And what this decision does is it throws up lots of additional roadblocks and obstacles to the remedy, right? Because when your constitutional rights are violated, this is going to make it much harder for individuals other than those who go to court and are themselves plaintiffs to have their rights adjudicated and restored. And so I do think this is a big blow, and it's another example of this Supreme Court that's been largely stacked by Donald Trump appointees, ceding their constitutional responsibilities and duties to the executive, when under Article 3, they're the ones that should be standing up and making sure that we can enforce our rights.
Well, not only ceding their power to rein in the executive, but the power of other courts to potentially stop the executive from taking illegal actions.
Absolutely. I mean the power of the judiciary. I mean the power of Article 3 courts. What the Supreme Court is done, and again, stacked largely by these Trump appointees, is ceding their power under the Constitution, in fact, their responsibility as a judicial branch. They're ceding that to Donald Trump, who is a lawless president. So when you have a combination of a lawless president like Donald Trump, and then you have a Supreme Court that wants to essentially get rid of the remedies that we have when it comes to enforcing our rights, this is a very dangerous moment. So I agree with Judge Jackson in her strong language.
Senator, while Donald Trump faces more nationwide injunctions than any other president, he is correct about that. That's because he issues more unlawful orders than any other president. These injunctions are not unique to Republicans. Joe Biden, his predecessor, had a number of his priorities stymied by similar nationwide injunctions. So this cuts both ways, no?
It does. You're exactly right. And there were, judges who enjoined some of President Biden's actions, his executive orders, where I disagreed with them. And of course, the idea then is they're adjudicated through the court system, from the district court level to the appellate court level, and ultimately to the Supreme Court level. But when you have a system that doesn't allow the most obvious violations of constitutional legal rights to be remedied on a nationwide basis when they're violated, then you expose people for very long periods of time to being stripped of their constitutional or other legal rights. And so that's why I think this was a blow to protecting our rights. And we now have two branches of government. We have the...
My question to you is, now that they have stayed and said essentially those lower court judge orders can't apply across the country, could this now open the door to some states not recognizing citizenship of people born in other states.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the executive order itself, by its face, says it's limited. It won't go into effect until 30 days later. And because of the remand order, I think it'll be on hold for a little bit. But certainly, once that time elapses, I think we are going to see the kind of chaos that the plaintiffs in this case argued about and the kind of chaos that we see described in the dissenting opinions. You know, this, of all cases, seems like the kind of case for which a nationwide injunction is necessary so that you don't have different rules in different states. We are going to have people who are immigrants giving birth to children without knowing what their status is. And I think one of the things that is also so important about this opinion, Anna, is it's not going to end with birthright citizenship. As Justice Sotomayor writes in her dissent, this means every constitutional right is at issue. So I imagine that the executive order machine at the White House is going into overdrive right now because they know that they can issue executive orders, and the court has now checked its own power as an ability to act as a co-equal branch of government.
You're seeing here judges furious with Trump and furious with MAGA because of the context that Trump has created, both in terms of eroding institutions, but also like endangering lives. The first judge I show, we've talked about this judge before, but she has an accomplished career, but the reason why she's so prominent is because she lost her son due to violence, because she was a judge in a case and she wasn't acting the way that somebody wanted her to act, and they took it out on their son. Right? We're very serious stuff. We're not talking about hypotheticals here, right? And of course, stuff like this happened before Donald Trump, right? Like, it's not like before Donald Trump, judges never got threatened, their families never got threatened. I want to make it clear. You can't blame that all on Trump. But what this judge has often stated is that while it happened before, it's more mainstream now than ever that judges are threatened and endangered, and their families are as well, and them doing their jobs is becoming criminalized only in the context of Donald Trump. He and his movement have made it worse. And while, look, I don't expect Donald Trump to hit criminal charges for levying threats, Donald Trump his threats are always stochastic. They're always, this person's awful, this person's, they hate America, this person is dangerous, they must be stopped, in general terms. And, maybe one of his MAGA goons, without direct orders from Trump, tries to do something insane, right? But you're not going to convict somebody in a country where the First Amendment exists, because that's way too indirect. But morally, he bears a responsibility given his power and his prominence, his size of his megaphone. And you see it there even from Justice Jackson. She's making it clear that fundamentally, Donald has morphed the court. MAGA has morphed the court. And it is far more ideologically partisan and extreme than it's been in living memory. And it's not just about disagreements, it's about growing fascism.